So hello everyone and welcome to this episode or this session of the Thriving Families Africa Summit. And our conversation for this moment is around a theme that is shaping homes, it's shaping schools, it's shaping communities across, not just in Kenya, across Africa, across the world. And that is Gen Z and mental health. This generation is often described as emotionally aware. We'll see if that's true. Digitally fluent. That's true for sure. And resilient hungry. They are hungry for resilience. So, and yet many families, schools, communities still find it very difficult trying to play catch up with Gen Z. We seem so many miles behind trying to understand the realities of Gen Z lives every day. And to have this conversation with us today is Brian Osano, who is the founder for AkiliSpace. This is a social impact initiative creating safe spaces for young people to talk about mental health without stigma. And I'm sure he will tell us more about how that is playing out on an everyday basis. But from classrooms to communities to juvenile centers, Brian is working alongside young people as they navigate anxiety, identity, and belonging. And on a personal note, Brian is also my former student, someone I have mentored over the years. I've had the privilege of watching him grow, and it's such an honor to now call him a colleague and also a mentee. In fact, Brian, the way I've saved you on my phone is still in relation to the course that I used to teach you way back. I haven't removed the EGC 101 from your name. Yeah. And so the Brian's passion for bridging generational gaps and helping families to decode Gen Z's silent battles is very, very inspiring. Brian, we are really glad to have you here at the summit today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. Yes, as you've heard, my name is Osano Brian, and I lead AkiliSpace. It's a social impact organization that focuses on social impact at large. But majorly, we're talking about mental wellness, we're talking about social integration, and spaces for young people, creating communities that lead to creating resilient young people. So yeah, basically that's me. And I am excited about this conversation because, well, we're not pointing fingers at families. What we're doing, we are building bridges, just like you said. Yeah. I know families love their children, but sometimes the love doesn't translate into understanding. So you'll find probably how a parent chose to love a child, probably the child will feel like I am not understood. So this conversation is building a bridge towards those realities. And we can explore together in these conversations how as family we can catch up, not by being perfect per se, but being present, being curious, and willing to grow alongside our children. So yeah, I believe this conversation will strengthen the family role as a safe space. So that as young people, we do not only survive, but we thrive based on the support we get from our families. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah. And I love that you have started with saying this is not a finger pointing conversation. It's coming from a place of let's be open. I like the curiosity. Let's be open. Let's be curious. Let's approach this with empathy, because on both sides of the generation, I've had quite a number of conversations around the generational divide in this summit. And really what you're speaking into, understanding, empathy, curiosity is really at the basis of the solutions that we are looking for. Yeah. So you work with a lot of young people, and two of them that have been on this summit, I met them through you. So again, you really are doing a great job in bridging the gap. The event that I attended, you put together an event, a physical event. I think it was an award ceremony or something a couple of months ago. And one of the things that really stood out for me, Brian, is how there was a whole mix of generations there. You know, I'm sure there was a boomer or two. I'm not sure about that, but yes, but I know a lot of us Gen X's were there, millennials were there, and then of course a lot of Gen Zs. But what really stood out for me is how aligned and integrated the conversations were, and how everybody just felt at home. So you really are doing an amazing job with AkiliSpace, and kudos to you for that work. Yeah. So I just wanted to, let's dive into the conversation and just find out then what are the most pressing mental health challenges you're seeing among Gen Zs today?
I think when you talk about the most pressing, one of the issues that really stems up a lot more times is anxiety.
Okay.
Like we have grown in this space where we've seen how our parents have actually done life, and to some extent, we really don't like it. But then what worked for our parents might not really work for us, because we saw them go to school, finish school, get a job, and then start from there. They find ourselves in a job on front until they retire. But then the reality has shifted. There's a saying that we usually joke about to say that they told us education is the key to life, but when we finished education, they changed the locks. It's funny how that is actually true.
Right.
So the things that we have do not really fit into the locks that are there. So there's anxiety and depression, which has been driven one by academic pressure. We're talking about the need for us to academically to be able to do well, so that when we come out, we'll get into these spaces. That was the expectation, but then the expectation is not met. You find we went to school, did our level best, and then came out to a new reality. So we are anxious. Wait, did we all waste our time getting all these good grades and all that, which does not work for us? And then it's too late for us to realize that we have to figure out what works for us. We're talking about social comparison. It is a very digitally driven world. So we see how everyone and everything goes on. And then you're like, wait, other young people seem to be doing well in life. And we're here, we're not really doing well as it is supposed to be. So what happens? We find that anxiety. Wait, are we lagging behind? Is there something that we're not doing right? But what we forget is that even those who are posting, they post the best sites. So everyone is grappling with something. And then last, we're talking about unemployment fears. So there's anxiety. Now we are like, okay, there's no employment. What else can we do? It's just a number of us who probably can be able to get into business and thrive. There's just a number of us who can actually get to start something and it thrives. So this goes into another aspect of identity and belonging struggle. So we are negotiating identity in a digital first world, in a very globalized culture. Also, there's an aspect of technology and social media, which is also another challenge. We're talking about this always on lifestyle. We have to keep up with what is happening in the world. While that is actually good, it is helping us to understand what is happening in the world. We can use social media for the positive reasons, but then we forget that even in this, the technology also is propelling us into spaces that we would have actually not gotten into were it not for technology. Well, with this, the presence of technology and social media, which now we're following clicks and likes and followers, we forget that that is only on social media. On the ground, things are different. That's what they say. So there's a whole disconnection on physical relationships and those. So there's a whole lot of loneliness. Most young people are very lonely, despite the fact that we have all these very many followers, we have all this going on. So there's also loneliness and disconnection, which now has stemmed from the aspect of technology and social media. So there's that paradox of being hyper connected, but then being emotionally disconnected, emotionally isolated. You realize, yes, you have all these more followers, but then when stuff happens, you really don't have anyone to talk to. You really don't have anyone to actually talk to, even share your struggles with. So there's a whole paradox. We think we have a lot more followers, we think we have a lot more friends, but then on the reality, we really don't have those spaces. Then lastly, we talk about stigma. There's a whole stigma that has been propelled, especially in the new age. We're talking about, let's talk about even the men. I think yesterday or today I saw a headline that they're talking about suicide. There's a whole, they were calling it the silent crisis of suicide in Kenya. So young men are actually taking their own lives. And then it's something that really hasn't really got to the headlines, but it's something that is happening. Then you realize it's in the same sense of society that we have in this manosphere, that people are talking about how a man should be. A man should be like this, a man should not cry, a man should not go out talking about their issues, a man should not, a man should not. What happens? So this whole stigma that is propelled. And you know, the people who look up to this, the people actually who look up to this cliques or manosphere are the young people. So what happens? They subscribe to these things. When they subscribe to these things, they end up suffering in silence because they feel, if I talk about it, then I'm not man enough. If I talk about it, then I'm really weak or something like that. So many don't seek help due to the fear of judgment. And we can talk about also inaccessibility to help. We're talking about when we actually want to seek for help, we really can't get to it because maybe we can't afford it, or maybe it is so far-fetched. For instance, when we were doing AkiliSpace the first time, I really didn't think about going into these spaces, marginal spaces. But then as we were doing it like a CSR, we were like, wait, this is actually a need in these communities because nobody has really done something like this in prison. Nobody has really done something like this in the marginalized urban settlements. And if they have, they're just doing it for the numbers and the reports and all that. So nobody's really intentional about it. At the end of it, you realize that we are not really doing it because we are intentional about it, but we are doing it to paint a picture. Say like our company has done a CSR and reached out to 100 young people, but does it, among these 100 young people, what was the real impact? So people just come to these places as visitors. They just visit. It's like as though you're just coming to see the realities and then you go out. But then when you're intentional enough, you realize actually we need to work with these young people. We need to work with this, the realities of this person so that we're able to help them thrive in this space. So I think that is what I've seen in my line of work with young people.
Yeah. And no wonder they're high levels of depression in society because of those gaps. Yeah. So where are we falling behind? I mean, we need to catch up. What are some of those areas that you're saying as a society? Again, this conversation is it's a no blame. It's a conversation. Where do you think we are falling behind?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a good question. And now that we're talking about families, I am a big believer of families as the most basic social unit. And if families are not working, then if the most basic social unit is not working right, then we don't expect other social units to work effectively. So it is ironical that we leave out the institution of family and then we expect every other thing to work for us. So let me talk about families falling behind and then we can now scale up to that the same. So I think for families, there's that generational gap. And when I talk about generational gap, I am treading carefully because I understand that each generation had their own way of viewing life. And that is so true. And even at the generation of our parents were once young people. So we live that reality. But then now when I talk about generational gap, I say it like this. As parents, we tend to see or parent our children based on the lens of our era. And then you realize, wait, times are changing, seasons are changing. What used to work then might not work now. For instance, I'll use a very, I think the most recent example, we've seen a lot of schools having Osano and all that.
Right.
And these are young people, probably 16, 17, 18. So teenagers, they're trying to find their identity and all that. But then you realize this generation is not the generation that you can pin down with fear. Like they will want to question everything. They want to interpret why exactly are you not telling us to do this and not to do this. And then probably in the other generation, parents will be like, the parents come and say, don't do that because I have said so. This generation realize you say, I've said so, and then the child will be like, why? So there's the need to be able to look at that gap. How do we understand how things were and how things are right now? Okay, how do we interpret issues? How did we used to interpret issues before? How are we interpreting issues right now? And then what is the missing context between these two generations? I think that's one thing I'd say. So failing to acknowledge the fact that there's a generational gap and there's the need for us to be able to understand that times are changing gets to families not having to be effective. And then that becomes now a whole new challenge. Another thing, we're talking about minimizing emotions. You said something about this generation being really heavy on mental health. There's a survey that was done the other day and young people are being asked, when you're searching for a job, what is the things that you consider? And then, so it's actually here in Kenya. So there were options. Are you looking for the pay? Are you looking for a good boss? Are you looking for mental health and all that? While we expect the pay to be the first one, most young people are like, I want a company that is good for my mental health, whatever that means for them. But a space that is helping you even thrive as a person and all that. I understand also that there might be a whole debate around this generation being entitled and all, and there might be some truth to that. But then you realize what we're saying right now is that they are really being intentional about their mental health. They're intentional about the spaces they get into. So you realize parents will not understand this. So you'll hear statements like, we didn't have generation in our times. These are something that is the day. So you see this dismissal of the real struggles, what happens? Then there's a whole disconnect that happens between the parents and the children. And then when this disconnect happens, then so you realize there's not really that close knit between families. Another thing we talk about is the overemphasis on academics. Most parents believe that you go to school, work hard, pass your exams, get good grades, get that first class, you'll make me proud. So anything beyond that, anything aside from that, this is what I want. This is what. So you realize even when the parent is really proud of you is when you've done this. But then let's look at the realities of our day, time, and age. We are realizing in a time where everything now is becoming like there's so many ways. We are now going away from the traditional careers, and there's a whole new shift in careers and all that. But then you probably it doesn't make sense because that is what worked for them. I remember there are parents out there, older people who will tell us that by the time they are finishing for 3 years, people were out there waiting with letters for them.
Yeah, several letters.
Yeah. Like you are like, you finish your last exam, we want to give you a job and a job. But wait, look at the reality of business right now. You'll finish, you'll get that first class. I know of people who have good grades, but then there's no job. And also, the funny thing about this time is that it seems like nobody really even wants to ask you for your papers. People are like, what have you done? What can you, and all that, blah, blah, blah. So this is a young person who the parent are telling them, work hard, do this, do this, do this. But then when they look at the reality of things, they're like, wait, but my brother or I know someone who did that and they're still out. So what are you telling me? What is the disconnect? So this well-meaning pressure, because I know parents always, they mean the best for us. They want the best for us. But then this gets to overlook the needs and the realities of the children. Sometimes even overlooking the emotional needs of the children. Then lastly, we can talk about the digital divide. So we are understanding that in the probably 2 decades is when technology has really taken shape in our society. But then probably our parents don't fully grasp the online world. So they really don't understand what is this thing that the Gen Z keep spending most of the time in and all that. So you'll hear parents saying like, you're wasting your time and all that. But then to this young kid, they're trying to do something out there. We are now finding look at COVID. COVID really shaped how we look at technology. Yeah. This is also a virtue because now you realize there's so many things that you can leverage on with technology. So the digital divide now gets to help us in understanding how, so when we have this digital divide, when parents don't fully understand this, it causes the divide among the children and the parents. But then when we allow ourselves to be able to understand, okay, what is this thing that my child or this Gen Z is actually working on? Can I get to understand where they're coming from before I impose what I want for them? Sometimes it gets to a point where you can actually have a negotiation. You say, as a parent, I want you to become a lawyer or something like that. But then this is what you want to do. You want to do art, you want to be a musician, you want to do art. So how about we have a level 50-50? You do the best in your academics, I will support you in your dreams and in what you want to do. So that I know the parent is looking at it and like, I want to make them have a career that makes sense, something that is, security. And that is coming from a very honest place. But then the child needs to understand that what my parent is telling me to do is that they're wishing the best for me. So having that conversation without really imposing then gets to have them make sense. Okay, wait, my mother or my father really wants the best for me and I want to do this. So how about we have that negotiation, getting to understand how do we get to a balance? How do we get to understand? I think basically that's what it's, yeah.
Yeah, so really the need for understanding from both sides. And I know sometimes I have a lot of these conversations where I tend to seem like I'm more young, more defensive of the young people than our everyday and my counterparts. But one of the things that for me, I know for sure is that we as the adults are the custodians of the future.
Yeah,
and the custodians and the people with more power, we've got a lot more work to do, because it is how we set the pace and how we create the environment that now the young people coming after us or coming alongside us can actually experience that thriving that you're talking about. Yeah, so I think then, and I have been asking this with any young person that is coming onto this summit, is what are some of these myths and misconceptions, just a few of them, about Gen Zs and mental health, and which ones do you feel need to be challenged the most?
Well, I have a lot to say about that.
Okay.
I've actually been in the same space where I've had to challenge a few of them.
Yeah.
You'll hear that let's start with the most famous one, microwave generation. When we talk about microwave generation, they're saying that we want things quick and fast and all that, which is not a lie. Sometimes we think that things just happen. And that is, so I have to challenge that with my colleagues, with the young people in my space, understanding that, you know what, yeah, we need to understand where our parents are coming from. They have lived this reality, and they have seen it. In the places that they are in right now, it's not something that have built in. So this one is a challenge to my fellow young people, but understanding that, yeah, at some point, we need to build that patience. I realize I am young, I'm being 2 years out of campus trying to work it out. And then I'm being given pressure by a person who's in the work industry for 10 years and they're driving a Mercedes. I'm like, what am I doing wrong with my life?
Yeah.
But then now it won't really help when we label a generation, but it would help when we sit down and probably have that conversation and help them understand that, you know, you really don't have to be hard on yourself because things have not worked out. Things take time. But then what happens when you label our generation based on that? Then they become defensive. So when someone is defensive, they won't really get to listen to you. Yeah. That's one thing. But then now we talk about the other, is Gen Z too soft? Well, that has been said a lot, but I don't think we are soft. Our generation, I don't think we are soft. We are not weak. What we are is more open to embracing our emotions, and I don't think that is a bad thing. Well, other generations seemingly, I'm not saying that totally, I'm saying that could have been the case. They learned to suppress their emotions. So when they learn to suppress their emotions, that probably looked as strength to them. But then, is it really strength? I think we are strong enough to be able to acknowledge the fact that this is exactly what we're going through, and we are not embarrassed to say that I am not okay today. We are not embarrassed to say that, you know, I'm going through this. We're not embarrassed to ask for help, and I think that's a strength. Because when you look at it cleanly, you get to understand, wait, these are people who are very intentional with their well-being. And very intentional with their well-being, probably it's coming from the older generations because we saw it in the older generations. I have friends, probably ladies, who would say, I watched my mother remain so quiet and really suppress what she felt or what she was going through within the family setup. And she's like, if I get into family, I will not really allow myself to be able to suffer silently. If it comes to that point, I will have to voice it out. We've seen a lot of Gen Z voicing out their frustrations, voicing out when they are not really okay and all that. So I don't think that's weakness. What I'd say, that is strength, being strong enough to acknowledge and embrace the emotions that you're going through. And they're very strong enough to be very intentional about their well-being. Another thing I'd say is it's just a phase. So you've seen how probably you'll be going through depression or you'll be going through it's just a phase. So we felt probably when the older generation say that they failed to understand that untreated struggles can escalate. But then we are intentional enough to treat those struggles as they come, then we are really taking care of our well-being. We're really taking care of ourselves so that we don't really see ourselves going into these spaces where you look back and you say, wait, I am actually here because I did not deal with that. You know how things keep piling up, and then you realize, wait, the small thing that happens and actually throws you off, realize it's a whole tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more things that you've let untreated. So that's another thing. Understanding that being intentional enough to treat the struggles as they come is not really, it's not a phase. It's not a phase because all these things build up. And if they build up and they find you that you're not really dealing with them, what happens? They might throw you off to a really bad place that you will not have been in if you are actually intentional about it. Another thing, therapy is only for the sick. You've seen a young generation which, hey, I'm going for therapy, and they're really open to it. And yeah, so you're like, wait, when you say you're going for therapy, are you sick? Are you, what is it? And then they fail to realize that when you look at therapy, you're looking at therapy also as a lifestyle. Therapy as a preventative measure. Therapy as a developmental approach. It helps us to be able to leverage on our best selves and work on the selves that are not really doing well so that we become the best version of what we want to become. because I'm proud of a generation that is really, really intentional about their lives. Yeah. We're talking about their careers, we're talking about their social lives, we're talking about the financial life, we're talking about all this. They've been really intentional. So you realize, young people, it's not really you. I have friends who are like, I have cut off my family because they're not good for my mental health.
Yeah, they're toxic.
Yeah, toxic. That's the word to use. So you fail to realize, wait, this is happening because we are not on the same page. Where they're coming from is not where you're coming from. So they feel like, you know what, I'm trying to get better as a person and you're pulling me behind. So what can I do? Just, I'm not talking to them anymore. So that happens because there's a whole divide based on this. Mm-hmm. Then you can talk about the last one where social media is there. So parents look at it and be like, it's social media. And yeah, that's, but we fail to realize also social media or technology can be a resource when guided. So when you demonize it, and then there's something, yeah, you see the things that you so much try to keep them away from, then it builds up all this new curiosity because you've really not explained to them why you think it's not good. So when you don't do that, when they get that chance, and I think also for this, not really now older, but these that are growing, it's like when you tell a child, usilambe usukari, don't, and then at some point when you're not there, they will actually lick that sugar. So yeah, just to know, okay, what is this thing that mom keeps telling me not to do? So how about you explain it to them that it's not good for your health, and blah, 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 blah. Same to social media. Why do you think social media is there? Also, it takes the parent to be intentional enough to understand and learn about social media. Look at the pros and the cons, because everything has two sides to it. So what are the pros and the cons? Okay, as you talk to them about social media or all these things, how about you explain it to them? Yes, I know there's a good side to it, but then this is also the bad side to it. So that you're not coming from just a one place, you're coming from both angles. Yeah, I think basically that some of the misconceptions I can change.
Yeah. Again, I'm having a lot of young people on the summit, and really you're speaking the same language, in terms of just take a little bit more time to understand, take a little bit more time to explain, to just see where we are coming from. And that is, makes sense a lot at a personal level, at a family level. What do you think the bigger society, the bigger systems like schools, communities, even the government and policymakers, what role do you think they can play in bridging this gap?
Okay, you see how family is very important in the development of a child. So is school. Mm-hmm. And let me talk about school for one. School can be the first line of defense. We can talk about, so let me talk about the other side of it, and then we come to talk about how we can go about it. Mm-hmm. I remember growing up, I think right now it has become really a thing. There's no corporal punishment, blah, blah, blah. But the first few times when we were growing up as children, we went to primary school. I think primary schools, there was a whole lot of corporal punishment. And I was like, so growing up, I'm looking back, I'm like, who beats child like that? Mm. So I'm trying to remember how tiny I was. And I'm trying to remember this teacher punishing me because of handwriting. I'm like, who beats a kid like that? But then you get to realize handwriting for sure. It's not like you beat a good handwriting to them. But also, well, might have worked, but it's coming from a place of fear. So what happens? We really don't have that connection. And when you live from a place of fear, it's not really the best way to live and all that. So when we talk about schools, I think most of the teachers were not really cautious about the well-being of children. Mm-hmm. Or probably they're still not really looking at the well-being of the children, because we are seeing what is happening right now. They want to impose, they want their ways, their way, and all that. And probably they're coming from all these other generations. So that's why we are seeing stuff like students ganging up against them and going on riots and banning schools and all that. Because when we are trying to have a conversation, we really can't get a conversation. So what happens? We force a conversation. And then probably it escalates to a place it shouldn't. And I'm not advocating for that. Yeah. But they will always find a way to make you listen.
That's very true.
We've seen it in our government, we've seen it in our country, we've seen it in the last few years, how the Gen Z have really come out in streets and actually, if you're not listening to us, then we'll make the country stop so that you listen to us. And in school, I think there needs to be now a whole different approach. Let's train teachers to notice the red flags. among themselves first. Like we can have teachers being intentional about the well-being of children, so that you'll understand there's a need for me as a teacher to be able to provide us a space for the student. I read a story the other day about a teacher shaming a young girl because they are going through their menstrual cycle. And the story says that they were taken to staff room, and then the other teachers were laughing about it. And I'm like, so what happens to this young girl? And then you get to look at this. This might be parents. This might be. So what is the disconnect around this?
Yeah.
How about we train teachers to be able to understand the need for them to come in as the first line of defense, to look out for the children? Because after home, they probably will spend the most time with teachers more than they spend with their parents once they get to go to school. So that means the teachers get to shape a lot more of what the students become. So there's a need for schools to be able to offer that safe space. Also in the schools, how about now we have safe counseling spaces? I remember, I think in all the schools I've gone, I've really not had mental health counselor or something. They probably pick the oldest teacher or the CRE teacher and then they place them there. So that's
right. Most it's yeah.
So that's what happens. So yeah, they're just there. And when you go to them, they're like, yeah, nothing really of help. So they're like, why should I even go to them? That's why you hear now there's a whole lot of depression, talking about being suicidal. We've seen a lot of self-harm in schools and all that. So about now the schools shift to actually being safe spaces for the children. Instead of now using all these the past ways of discipline and all that. How about we need to understand this generation is a whole new one, and that doesn't work anymore. Or they've gotten to understand, you know what, we need to understand why do we do this, or why are we not told not to do this? Because now when you explain it to them, it comes from a place of understanding and knowledge, and like, okay, I'm being told to use a good handwriting because blah blah blah. I'm using that because I was a victim of the same.
Yeah. Good handwriting now, I don't remember.
Well, I had to. I don't know. I don't want to say it worked. I don't want to say it worked, but probably okay. Yeah. So basically, that's it. Getting to help them understand why do we want them to do the things the way we want them to do the things, don't just impose. Yeah. So if a school principal comes and says, "I'm not letting you watch the game or something," and then you're like, "Okay, why?" Then they're like, "Okay, wait, it is supposed to be entertainment time. Okay, can we have dialogue? Wait, now if we get to watch this game, then you'll have to extend or probably find time to go back to your class at a given point." You see, that is coming from a better place. So it's like, okay, we'll use these 2 hours on Saturday, but on Sunday, those 2 hours for games time, we'll have to stay back in class to do. You see, that kind of dialogue probably avoids a lot more things that you're seeing right now.
Absolutely.
And probably that is just the tip of the iceberg. There's some underlying factors that now this small thing that happens, and then like, you know, Metuzoya we will show you. So that's actually how it comes. So how about we have this conversation with the students and get to understand, wait, this is where we're coming from. This is why we want you to do the things, how we want you to do this. And I think that helps a lot more better. Sometimes it might feel like it will not work because we grew up in society where, or in schools where punishment was it. You're being punished and it was coming from a place of fear. So when you fear a certain teacher, you have to do what they say. But okay, to what extent does it work? How long will it work?
How long does fear work?
Exactly. So that's another thing. And then lastly, another thing we can talk about workplaces. And I know the older generation have really had it with Gen Zs in the workplace. Yeah, so the older Gen Zs, I think the older Gen Zs are now entering the job market, yeah? And then so we have had a whole new conversation where employers are like, hey, Gen Z and all that and all that and all that.
Tell you, there are many videos and many papers that are being written around that, yeah.
But another thing is the Gen Z have really shaped the work culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's give it to them, because I think it has come to a point where these guys have the knowledge, they have the creativity, they have the skills, but then the employer, I think they don't have the character probably, or the etiquette and all that. So how about we get to look at it from this angle? Okay, they're coming from this point, we're coming from this point. Maybe this is what used to work for us. This is how we used to enforce around the space. But then with the Gen Z coming in, there's a whole new shift. This is how they want things done. And I'm not saying we give it to them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we give it to them. I'm not advocating for that. But how about we get to understand, okay, this is where you're coming from. This is a whole business. How do you want us to work around it? Because there are roles that have to be kept here.
Mm-hmm.
They are, well, they are all roles that have to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get to that space? And then you realize we have gotten to a place where when they say mental health, I want something that is good for my mental health and all that, it's not coming from a place of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
Probably as an employer, there are things you are doing that are really punitive. So when a Gen Z comes to your workplace and then they're like for 2 months and they're like, you know what, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then another Gen Z comes and they're like, I can't do this. Because another thing is there's that, how do I call it? It's not strength. Yeah, courage. There's a courage for Gen Z to start over. And I've seen that in a lot of my friends, a lot of my peers.
Yeah.
Starting over is not really an issue.
It's not scary, like for us.
Yeah. So you know what? I don't have to live here, do this for the rest of my life, feeling like I am actually at the mercy of someone else. Why? Because we've seen it in our parents.
Yeah.
You see your parent come home and complain about a job and complain about a boss, and then still wake up the next day and go back to the same job. And you're like, see, watch it.
Yeah.
and you're like, okay. But then probably there's a whole lot of factors to it. But then with my generation, starting over, it's not really that big of a factor. And there's a saying that my friend told me at some point and really made sense to me. Like, why would I waste my most productive years doing something that really does not contribute to the person I want to become? So you see, when you work with mantras like this, you look back and ask yourself, wait, is this how I want to live my life? No. So what happens? Adios.
And I'm staring at 50 years of my life. This is not what I want to be.
Not what I want. And it's actually been like maybe 1 year of working in that space and all that. We know bills have to be paid, you know that. But then you forget this is a very creative generation. So they will always you know, also there's something which will say there's always a way out. I tell myself, if you really want to sleep angry, if it gets to a point where I really have to start over and I can always go to a friend and sleep on a couch and figure out what I want to do with my life and all. You know, this is their realities. And probably we don't see that. You're like, you are very entitled. I think I remember something. We were in church and we were sitting with a group of friends, and then this friend was telling us how he quit a given opportunity after 1 week. And then they were asking him why. And then like, I can't do that. That's not who I want to become and all that. And then there was this millennial who was saying, hey, Gen Z, you guys are very impatient. But then I was looking at it. I know it can be a whole conversation. But then you need to understand that we have really different realities and probably different way and lenses of how we look at life. So you realize you'll see a young person quit their job, and then they're like, you know what? I don't want a 9 to 5. I want to do a business. So what happens? They go and try a business. They have social media. They set up a desktop page, and they use that small money they have, and they start something. And then they grow, and you see that because if they really put their heads to something they want, they will give it 100. So I have a friend who has never used the certificate. They have never gone back to their certificates in campus. You might look at it and like, okay, but he was like, no, that's not what I want to do. So out of campus, he came out and he started thrifting. So he was going pick clothes, good clothes, buy, come do laundry on them and all that, and then put them on their page. And they sell. And on sell. So he was working from his place, selling it online, people buy, blah, blah, blah. 1 year down the line, he has a shop in town. So he's using that, he's improving. 2 years now, he no longer goes for the thrift, he actually imports clothes, new clothes. He has 2 shops in town and he's doing well for himself. Right. So if you actually looked at him starting, you'll be like, yo, what are you doing? You are messing your future, your career, this is not secure and all that. But it's hard everywhere. It is hard being in employment. It is hard doing business. Choose your heart. So he chooses hard. So that's it. We look at it. It is hard for me being in this space. It is hard for me to quit and start something new. I have to weigh them and like, what is the heart that I want to go with? And you choose your heart. So that's the reality that we come from. And if you fail to acknowledge that, if you fail to recognize that, then you'll go around judging these young people and all that. You're seeing young people who actually focusing on content creation. Content creation doesn't seem to be like something. But there are people actually right now, very young people, driving cars not really big cars, but they're driving because of content creation, because they have done something on social media, they have followers, brands are looking for them, and now they're actually doing advertisement and they're being paid good money. So you might not really think what they're doing is making sense, but if it's making sense and they really believe in it, they will find ways to make it work.
And they give it their all.
They give it their all, provided something that makes sense, and it's something that really goes down into their passion. They will give it their all, and somehow it works for them.
Yes, I like what you said, so long as it makes sense, because I hear that from my son a lot. Mom, make it make sense. It's a very important thing that something makes sense.
Yeah,
it does. They give it their all. All right. So I think, even as now we are listening to all this and you're like, oh my gosh, more work for us as parents. But what are some of the things we can just do? What practical steps? Where do we start as parents and as custodians of young people?
Good question. Now, I think that's the right question to ask as we start with it. Because even sometimes when we have those conversations with our kids, there are some of the questions we need to ask them so that we get their point of view. Sometimes we come and give advice and impose from our own realities. It's like saying, you look at me and you think I need a shirt. But then what I really need, I don't really need a shirt. What I need is a watch. Because a watch, for me, it makes sense. It will help me probably wake early and all that. So all these things are good, yeah? But I don't need what you're giving me. I need water. So I think that's same to others. We come and impose what we think is good for them. It is actually good, but is it what they really need? So sometimes it gets too fast, getting to their realities. So what I'd say is, first of all, active listening. So when they come to us and they're talking to us about something, they'll be like, Mom, can I ask you something? So they have asked, the moment they've not really even finished it, you're like, oh, okay, blah, 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 blah. You give that. Okay. See, so there's a whole disconnect. Sometimes hear without rushing to correct or to judge them. Then you'll hear, my mom really doesn't listen to me.
Yeah.
And you think you've always been there, you're listening to them. So what do you mean? But probably if you do an introspection, you're like, okay, sometimes I just hear to give my take. Yeah. How about sometimes I just listen to them? Listen to where they're coming from, listen to their realities, where they come and share about this sometimes delicate stuff. Sometimes they come and tell us delicate stuff. Now, what happens? You are all over. You now, you know what happens and all that. So they won't really come and tell you stuff again because they're like, hey, mom will not really, they will react in a certain way, in a certain day. So how about when they come to you? Because that is the first step of creating a relationship with them. Listening goes a long way in building a whole relationship. So when you rush, you hear without rushing to judge, without rushing to correct, then it gives them that assurance that, you know what, I can actually talk to my mom, I can actually talk to my father about anything. Another thing is learning the world. Learning the world now, because sometimes we rush to impose what we know, but then you fail to realize that things and realities have shifted. So what is really shifting? And I know that's a lot more work for parents, but it is important because you learn the world, then you know where they're coming from. So you really won't be too harsh on them. You really won't be too hard on them. So understand probably their digital platforms, understand their trends, understand all these realities where they're coming from. And then another thing I'd say is model openness. So modeling openness now goes into a long way. When you model openness, then you're able to allow them in your world as a parent. So sometimes it takes us to sit, and as they're talking about their struggles, probably, then you're sharing your own struggles. And when you share their own struggles and they're like, wait, you also had your fair share of struggles growing up, and probably when you were around my age. And it's not normal for me to go through this, because if mom went through them and she's here, then I can actually go through them and I'll be okay. So it builds a lot more trust, and then it makes them feel not alone. Another thing would be create safe spaces. Ask a question. How will we create safe spaces if we're not really there for children? I know, parents work so hard to ensure that their children are well provided for. They go out of their way to be able to ensure that their children are well provided for. But what's the need if you don't have a relationship with the child?
Yeah.
I'll give an example. I was having a session with a young person, and they were telling me how they're not really close with their father. And when we were talking about it, I was asking, okay, was he always like that? And they said, no. There's a time we will actually go out, we will play with him, and all and all and all. So what changed? When did it change? And then she said, when you got the money. So
actually able to share the point at which this changed. Huh?
Yeah. So what do you think about this? And then she's like, I actually don't need the money. I wish we were how we were. I don't actually. I wish we never got that much money like we have right now. And that's a sad way, yeah. That's a sad way to look. If you look at it, actually, if you listen to it then, yeah, that's a sad way to live.
Yeah.
So right now, they don't really have a relationship with that much because I think, yeah, to her, he changed. Yeah. He's never home. He's always busy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And no wonder, for a child like that, getting money will not be a priority when it comes to a career. It's the mental health, it's being present. And one of the things I've seen, and even just having conversations with young people, even in this summit, is they do desire connection. They do desire having families. We are always saying, oh, they don't want to have families but they really do. And just that connection is very important. So as we come to a close of this conversation, I just wanted to find out now, you've really shared a lot on what we need to do and what the issues are, the myths, the misconceptions. And I know probably you might have that one final word, word of encouragement on both sides, just about connecting with Gen Zs around mental health. What would that be?
I'll use 2 words.
2.
Presence and connection.
Okay.
Why? There's something you said about Gen Zs not wanting families. Mm-hmm. The reality of stuff is that if it's not going to work out, then I'd rather not have it at all.
Yeah.
You see, because we've seen our parents, probably, we've seen our society where this was the case. Mm. So you'll say Gen Zs don't want children, don't want families. They're like, why would I bring this world to make a very innocent soul suffer the consequence of the choices that I made as a parent? I'd rather not do that because probably most of them are suffering the consequences of their parents. Another thing for families, they have seen how they have the ideal picture of what a family should look like. And if I'm not getting that kind of knitted family, then I'd rather not have it at all. Mm. So that's where it's coming from. So connection and presence. Mm. Gen Zs, and probably every young person is not asking parents to have all the answers. They just want presence, they want empathy, and the willingness to learn together. Mm. The presence, empathy, and willingness to learn together. Mm. We don't know it all, and we know that. So don't act like you know it all. We just want you to be there. We just want you to show that you care. And we just want to feel like, yeah, even if your family, we are close-knit friends, or we are so close, I can count on my family, I can come back home and, I have a circle for me. That's why you see on social media, you'll see probably that this who have a good relationship with their fathers and all that, and then you'll see comments like, so you see something like that.
Yeah.
It's such a blissful moment to know that, because I see it probably like on the singer Nameless, how they have really a close relationship with the daughter. Mm. So you'll go back to the comments and be like, okay, this is how people really want. I wish my father would. Maybe I can't sit with my father and have a conversation. Lucky you. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. So you get to realize, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. So that's it. We're not asking you to have all the answers. We're just asking for presence and connection.
Yeah. And I really love how you've ended that. It's okay if you don't know. Let's for those answers together. I don't know, you don't know, but Can you at least admit you don't know? Because we come also as adults with a lot of, I know it all, I've been there, I have the experience, and sometimes that can really come in the way of us really being able to connect. So thank you so much, Brian, for sharing, for giving us such amazing examples, for also just showing us that connecting in this space with young people has a lot to do with our openness, our curiosity, and our empathy. I celebrate you for the work that you are doing, and I wish you all the best as you keep doing this amazing work. And for those who would want to connect with Brian, his contacts and everything he does will be part of the resources in this summit. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be part of this. I am really humbled to work alongside you. And thank you for being my mentor and helping me become the person I've become. Thank you.
It's been such an honor watching you grow, and I wish you all the best.
Asante sana.